Tony Bennett, the WW2 singer who survived hell and came back singing about love in the heart of New York City in 1940, where the sounds of jazz filled the air and dreams danced in the flickering lights of bustling clubs. One young man's voice was about to be tested in the most profound way. What happens when the rhythm of your life is abruptly silenced by the call of duty? For Tony Bennett, born Anthony Benedetto, this question loomed larger than ever as the world around him began to tremble with the encroaching shadows of war. Dressed in a sharp suit that hugged his slender frame, Tony stepped onto the stage of the famed Apollo Theater, the vibrant energy of Harlem coursing through his veins. The audience, a mosaic of faces illuminated by the warm glow of candlelight, awaited the magic of jazz that only he could deliver. His dark hair, slicked back, framed a face that radiated charisma and youthful dreams. With a deep breath, he grasped the microphone, feeling the cool metal against his palm, and launched into a soulful rendition of "Because of You." The sultry notes soared through the air, mingling with the laughter and chatter of the crowd, creating an intoxicating atmosphere that felt like a warm embrace. In the crowd, Maria Russo watched with admiration. Her eyes sparkled like the stars above, reflecting the vibrant energy of the city. Maria, with her flowing dark hair and delicate features, was not just Tony's childhood sweetheart but also an aspiring artist in her own right. She often painted the world as she saw it, vibrant and alive, but right now, her heart beat in sync with Tony's music. Every note he sang seemed to echo her own hopes and dreams, forging an unbreakable bond between them. But beneath the surface of this joyous night lay a tension that was palpable. The distant rumble of war clouds loomed, casting a shadow over the carefree life they had built together. As the performance concluded, applause erupted, but Tony's heart was not in the celebration. He could feel the weight of an impending call, a duty he could not sidestep. The news of the draft had spread like wildfire, and soon, the lives of young men like him would be irrevocably altered. Later, under the dim light of a small cafe, Tony and Maria sat across from each other, the remnants of their dinner untouched as they both grappled with the inevitable. The clinking of glasses and murmurs of other patrons faded into the background as Tony reached for Maria's hand, his expression serious. "Maria," he began, his voice low and steady, "they've called me. I have to go." Her eyes widened, a mix of fear and disbelief swirling within them. "But Tony, you can't. Not now. Not when everything is finally starting to happen for you." The desperation in her voice pierced through the cheerful ambience of the cafe. He squeezed her hand tighter, searching for the right words to ease her fears. "This is my duty. I can't just sit back while others fight. I need to do this, not just for me but for all of us." His gaze softened, but the resolve in his heart was unyielding. "I promise, I will come back. I will sing again." Maria's lips quivered, tears pooling in her eyes. "And what if you don't? What if something happens to you?" The fear of loss hung heavy in the air, like a storm cloud ready to burst. Tony's heart ached at the thought. "I will come back, Maria. I have to. Our music, it connects us. I'll carry it with me, no matter where I go." He leaned closer, the distance between them shrinking. "I'll write to you. I'll make sure you know I'm okay." As the night wore on, the couple clung to each other, drawing comfort from their shared dreams and unspoken fears. The vibrant jazz of New York City continued to pulse outside, a stark contrast to the uncertainty that lay ahead. In that moment, the world felt both full of possibility and on the brink of chaos. Days turned into weeks, and the inevitable day arrived when Tony found himself standing in line with other young men, all of them awaiting their fate. The atmosphere was thick with anxiety, laughter rarely breaking through the tension. The weight of their impending departure settled on Tony's shoulders like an unwelcome cloak. As he looked around at the faces of his fellow soldiers, he spotted Sam O'Connor, a steadfast friend from the neighborhood who had always been the first to crack a joke to lighten the mood. "Tony!" Sam called out, his voice cutting through the heavy silence. "Looks like we're in this together, huh?" His grin, wide and infectious, brought a flicker of hope to Tony's heart. "Yeah, together," Tony replied, forcing a smile. "Let's just hope we get back home in one piece." the humor of the moment barely masked the anxiety that gnawed at them both. In the days leading up to their departure, Tony and Sam spent every spare moment reminiscing about their lives back home, about the music that had filled their days and the girls who had captured their hearts. They often found themselves at the same cafe where Tony had last spoken with Maria, the laughter and music now mingled with the bittersweet taste of impending separation. As the sun set on their final night in New York, Tony stood with Maria on a quiet street corner, the glow of streetlights casting a warm hue over them. "I'll carry your love with me, Maria," he promised, his voice steady even as his heart trembled. "Whenever I sing, I'll sing for you." She nodded, her hand slipping into his. "And I'll be waiting for you, Tony. You have to come back. You have to keep singing." The conviction in her voice gave him strength, but the reality of their situation weighed heavily on both of them. The next morning, as the dawn broke over the skyline, Tony took a deep breath, feeling the crisp air fill his lungs. He turned to look back at the city he loved, the vibrant life he was leaving behind. The music, the laughter, and the love all seemed to blend into a bittersweet melody in his mind. He was stepping into the unknown, a world filled with uncertainty and danger, but he knew that he would fight to return to the stage, to the light, and to the love of his life. As the bus pulled away, Tony glanced out the window, catching a final glimpse of Maria standing on the curb, her figure shrinking into the distance. A silent promise echoed within him: he would return, and when he did, he would sing louder than ever before. The thrill of jazz, the warmth of love, and the harsh reality of war were all intertwined in his heart, a symphony that had only just begun. The clatter of jazz trumpets and the soft murmur of laughter faded into distant echoes as Tony Bennett stepped off the ferry, his heart heavy with uncertainty. The bright lights of New York City, a vibrant backdrop to his youthful aspirations, felt like a lifetime away. The war was not just a distant threat, it was now a reality he could not escape. As he stood on the muddy banks of an unfamiliar land, he clutched his duffel bag tightly, feeling the weight of his dreams crushed under the burden of duty. Tony was quickly whisked away into a military camp in the heart of Europe, where the air was thick with tension and the scent of damp earth lingered ominously. The camp buzzed with the hurried movements of soldiers, some laughing nervously, others solemn and lost in their thoughts. Among them, he spotted Sam O'Connor, his childhood friend, whose steadfast loyalty and sense of humor had always been a grounding force in Tony's life. Sam's familiar face brought a flicker of solace amid the chaos that engulfed them. "Tony! You made it," Sam exclaimed, his eyes brightening. "I thought the war would take you before I got to see you again." The two embraced tightly, a moment of warmth shared against the cold reality of the world. "Yeah, well, here I am. You know, I always thought our biggest battles would be on stage," Tony replied, forcing a smile. "But I guess life had other plans for us." As they settled into the new routine, they found fleeting moments of joy amidst the bleakness. In the evenings, Tony would gather the other soldiers around, strumming his guitar as he sang snippets of the jazz tunes that filled his soul. Their laughter and camaraderie became a balm, a temporary escape from the horrors they faced. But even those small acts of defiance could not shield them from the harshness of war. The reality of their situation was harsh and unforgiving. With each passing day, Tony witnessed the toll that the war took on his fellow soldiers. The constant threat of death and the loss of friends started to weigh heavily on him. Each letter from Maria, filled with love and longing, became a bittersweet reminder of what he was fighting for, a future that felt increasingly uncertain. One evening, as the sky turned a deep shade of indigo, Tony sat under a tattered blanket, reading one of Maria's letters by the flickering light of a kerosene lantern. Her words danced off the page, weaving dreams of a life together filled with music and laughter. But beneath her hopeful prose lay an undercurrent of anxiety that gnawed at Tony's heart. "Tony, you have to come back to me. Promise me you will." Maria's words echoed in his mind, and he felt a lump rise in his throat. He wanted to promise her that everything would be okay, that they would dance again under the stars in New York, but the uncertainty of his situation made it hard to utter those words aloud. "Hey, buddy, you okay?" Sam's voice cut through the silence, pulling Tony from his reverie. "You've been awfully quiet lately." "Just thinking about Maria," Tony confessed, the weight of his worries spilling out. "I don't want her to worry, but it's hard to keep the hope alive when everything around us is falling apart." "I get it," Sam said, his voice steady. "But we need to keep pushing forward. You know, I heard about a troupe show coming up. They're looking for performers. You could sing. Bring some happiness to the guys. It might help you too." Tony considered Sam's suggestion. Music had always been his refuge, a way to express the inexpressible. The thought of bringing joy to his fellow soldiers, even for a fleeting moment, ignited a flicker of hope within him. "You really think it would help?" "Absolutely," Sam replied, his eyes shining with encouragement. "You have a gift, Tony. You need to use it." Motivated by Sam's words, Tony began to prepare for the performance. He rehearsed tirelessly, channeling his fears and hopes into every note. The night of the show arrived, and as he stepped onto the makeshift stage, the cheers of his fellow soldiers filled the air, momentarily drowning out the sounds of war. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and let the music flow from his heart, a melody of love, longing, and resilience. As the first notes filled the tent, the soldiers swayed, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of lanterns. For that brief moment, the war faded into the background. They were not just soldiers but men with dreams, laughter, and the memory of home. With every song, Tony felt the weight of his worries lift, replaced by the shared joy and camaraderie surrounding him. But as the night wore on, the harsh reality crept back in. The echoes of laughter were soon overshadowed by the ominous sounds of distant artillery. The performance marked a brief respite, but it also underscored the fragility of their situation. Tony could feel the tension in the air, the fear that lurked just beneath the surface. Days turned into weeks, and the war raged on. Tony and Sam found solace in their friendship, but the relentless nature of their environment began to take its toll. Each letter from Maria became a lifeline, but the distance between them felt insurmountable. The uncertainty of their future weighed heavily on both men. Were they fighting for a future that might never come to pass? One evening, as they sat huddled around a fire, sharing stories to keep their spirits high, Sam turned to Tony with a serious expression. "You know, if we make it out of this, we have to promise each other we'll never take anything for granted. Not our dreams, not our families, not each other." "Agreed," Tony said, his heart swelling with gratitude for his friend. "When this is over, I'm going to sing my heart out. I'll be back in the clubs, and I'll make sure Maria knows just how much I love her." Their conversation lingered in the air, a fragile promise held against the backdrop of uncertainty. As the stars twinkled above them, Tony felt a renewed sense of purpose. The war may have taken him away from the stage, but it could not steal his passion for music or his love for Maria. As the days turned into a blur of drills and missions, Tony knew he had to find a way to stay grounded. He began to write songs inspired by his experiences, weaving the pain and hope he felt into melodies. Each song became a testament to their resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, love could shine through. But the war was relentless. One fateful afternoon, during a routine patrol, the tension exploded. Gunfire erupted around them, shattering the fragile peace they had fought so hard to maintain. In the chaos, Tony could hear Sam calling out, his voice filled with fear and urgency. "Tony! We need to move!" As they ducked for cover, Tony's heart raced. The noise of battle drowned out every thought, every note he had ever sung. In that moment, the music felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the stark reality of survival. They fought side by side, but the scars of war were beginning to etch their marks on their souls. As the dust settled and the echoes of gunfire faded, the two friends found themselves huddled together, hearts pounding and breathless, surrounded by the remnants of their shattered world. The bond they shared had been tested, but it was stronger than ever. "Whatever happens, we're going to make it through this," Sam said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Yeah, I promise," Tony replied, his heart heavy but determined. As they regrouped with their battalion, the weight of uncertainty loomed large. But within that uncertainty, Tony found a flicker of hope. He would return to New York, to the stage, and to Maria. The war might have taken his present, but it would not claim his future. If you want to follow Tony's journey through the trials of war and his unwavering love for music and Maria, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Together, we'll explore how one man's voice could inspire hope in the darkest of times. Stay tuned for more as we continue this incredible story. In the throbbing heart of wartime Europe, the air was heavy with uncertainty. The once vibrant notes of jazz that had filled Tony Bennett's days were now replaced by the sounds of gunfire and the anguished cries of soldiers. Each day, he awoke to the grim realities of conflict, a brutal landscape that had swallowed his dreams whole. Yet, the flickering light of hope remained, buried deep within him, waiting for a chance to shine. The early morning sun cast a golden hue over the battlefield, illuminating the smoke that lingered in the air like a ghost. It was a day like any other, but for Tony and his friend Sam O'Connor, the stakes had never been higher. They were crouched in a trench, their breath mingling with the dampness of the earth, their eyes scanning the horizon for signs of movement. Tony's heart raced not just from the tension, but from the weight of his decisions. "Tony," Sam whispered, his voice barely audible above the distant rumble of artillery. "If we get out of this, we need to find a way back to New York. I want to see Maria again." The intensity in his eyes reflected every ounce of desire to return home. It was a plea that resonated with Tony, igniting the embers of his own longing for Maria, the girl who had anchored his dreams. "Yeah, Sam," Tony replied, trying to project confidence even as doubt gnawed at him. "We will. We'll sing again, I promise." The words felt hollow, but he clung to them like a lifeline. Music was more than just notes, it was a promise of better times, of love waiting at the end of a tumultuous journey. Suddenly, the tranquility shattered. An explosion erupted nearby, sending dirt and debris flying. The ground trembled beneath them, and chaos ensued. "Get down!" Sam shouted, pulling Tony into the relative safety of the trench. But in that moment of panic, a shadow loomed over them. A squad of enemy soldiers had emerged, weapons drawn and eyes cold with intent. "Run!" Sam yelled, pushing Tony away as bullets whizzed past them. "I'll hold them off." Tony hesitated, his heart pounding in his chest. Every instinct screamed at him to stay, to fight alongside his friend. But he knew that if he didn't get moving, they would both be lost. Torn between loyalty and survival, he made his choice. "I won't leave you," he shouted, desperation lacing his voice. "Go!" "That's an order." Sam's eyes locked onto Tony's, filled with an intensity that left no room for argument. As the enemy drew closer, Tony felt the weight of his decision pressing down on him. He took a step back, then turned and ran, knowing that every step he took was a step away from his friend. The landscape blurred as he sprinted through the smoke and chaos. Each footfall echoed like a drum, a reminder of the life he was leaving behind. He could hear the sounds of gunfire behind him, the cries of men fighting for their lives. But all he could think of was Sam, his friend, his brother in arms, who had just sacrificed everything for him. Tony ran until his lungs burned and his legs threatened to give out. Finally, he stumbled into a small clearing, heart racing with adrenaline and guilt. He collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath, his mind racing with images of Sam's face. The weight of his choice settled heavily on his shoulders, a reminder that in war, survival often meant sacrifice. Hours passed, but the sounds of battle still echoed in Tony's ears. Just as he began to process his feelings of loss and regret, a group of soldiers appeared, grim-faced and covered in dirt. Their uniforms were tattered, emblematic of the relentless struggle they had endured. One soldier, an imposing figure with a scar running down his cheek, approached Tony. "Where's your unit?" the soldier demanded, eyes narrowed. Tony struggled to find his voice, the reality of his situation crashing down on him. I don't know," he stammered, the words feeling inadequate. "I was separated from my friend." The soldier's expression softened slightly, but the seriousness of the situation remained. "We need to regroup. Follow us." As he walked alongside the group, a sense of despair engulfed him. He couldn't shake the image of Sam, standing his ground against the enemy. Had he made the right choice? The thought tormented him, swirling in his mind like a storm. As night fell, the soldiers found refuge in a makeshift camp, a temporary sanctuary amid the chaos. The flickering light of a single lantern illuminated the weary faces around him. Tony sat apart from the group, lost in thought, his heart heavy with guilt and longing. He thought of Maria, her laughter, her dreams, and how far he had strayed from those moments. But then, a voice broke through his reverie. "You can sing, right?" A young soldier, no older than 18, looked at him with hope in his eyes. "We could use a little music. It might lift our spirits." The other soldiers nodded, their expressions eager yet weary. Tony hesitated, the weight of his sorrow pressing down on him. But as he glanced around at the faces staring back at him, he realized that music could be their refuge, just as it had been for him. With a deep breath, he nodded and rose to his feet. The familiar urge to perform surged through him, igniting a flicker of hope amidst the darkness. As he cleared his throat, the soldiers gathered closer, their anticipation palpable. Tony began to sing, his voice cutting through the night like a beacon. He poured his heart into the lyrics, weaving tales of love, loss, and resilience. The men listened intently, their worries momentarily forgotten as they were transported to a world far removed from the battlefield. With each note, he felt the weight of his guilt begin to lift, replaced by something more powerful. He could see their spirits rising, the tension easing from their shoulders. For a brief moment, they were not soldiers but dreamers, united in the universal language of music. But then, the moment shattered. A distant sound, like thunder, rumbled across the sky. The soldiers stiffened, their joy replaced by fear. "Get ready," the scarred soldier barked, urgency lacing his voice. "We're moving out." As the men scrambled, Tony's heart sank. He had brought them joy, but now reality loomed like a dark cloud. He was about to follow the soldier when he caught a glimpse of something, a flash of light in the distance. It was not the dawn he had hoped for, but the unmistakable gleam of enemy vehicles approaching. "Take cover," he shouted, instinctively diving behind a nearby mound of dirt. The soldiers followed suit, their earlier camaraderie replaced by the reality of impending danger. The sound of approaching vehicles grew louder, vibrating in Tony's chest. He couldn't shake the image of Sam, standing alone against the enemy. Was he okay? Had he survived the ambush? As the vehicles drew closer, Tony's thoughts spiraled into chaos. The men around him were tense, fear etched on their faces as they prepared for the worst. Suddenly, gunfire erupted, shattering the silence of the night. The soldiers returned fire, and Tony felt the adrenaline surge through him once more. He fought alongside them, each shot echoing his desperation to survive, to find Sam. His heart raced, not just from the fear of death, but from a deeper realization that he had to fight not only for himself but for those he had left behind. The battle raged on, the air thick with smoke and the acrid smell of gunpowder. Just as the chaos reached its peak, a figure emerged from the haze, a soldier, battered but resolute, charging toward them. Tony squinted, heart pounding as recognition hit him like a wave. It was Sam. "Tony!" Sam shouted, breathless but alive. Relief washed over Tony, making him forget the chaos around them, if only for a moment. But then, the realization hit, Sam was not alone. Behind him, a group of enemy soldiers surged forward, weapons raised. With no time to think, Tony reacted instinctively. He grabbed a rifle from the ground and joined Sam, fighting back against the tide. The intensity of the moment blurred the lines between fear and determination as they fought side by side, brothers in arms once more. But as the dust settled and the enemy retreated, a heavy silence enveloped the battlefield. Tony turned to Sam, only to find him grimacing in pain, clutching his side. "Sam!" Tony rushed to his friend, panic surging through him. "You're hurt." "It's just a scratch," Sam insisted, though the pallor of his face told a different story. "We need to get out of here." But before they could move, the ground shook once more, and the sounds of war returned with a vengeance. Tony felt the weight of the decision he had made earlier crash over him again. Had he failed Sam? Was it too late to make it right? In that moment of turmoil, a realization struck him like a bolt of lightning. They were not just fighting for their lives, they were fighting for the very essence of hope, a hope embodied in the songs Tony had sung, the love he felt for Maria, and the dreams that still flickered in the darkness. He turned to Sam, determination igniting in his chest. "We're getting out of this together, I swear it." With a deep breath, he hoisted Sam's arm over his shoulder and began to move. The fight was not over, but they would not face it alone. As they stumbled through the remnants of the battlefield, the sounds of war fading behind them, Tony felt a sense of clarity. He would return to Maria, to the music, to the life that had been waiting for him all along. But first, he had to ensure that Sam made it back too. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but together, they would rise from the ashes of conflict, carrying the spirit of their dreams with them. And as they moved forward, the echoes of jazz began to fill the silence, a melody of resilience and love that would guide them home. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over New York City as Tony Bennett and Sam O'Connor walked down the familiar streets of their hometown. The chaos of war still echoed in the back of their minds, but the sounds of bustling life around them began to drown out the haunting memories. The vibrant jazz notes wafted through the air, reminding them of the life they had fought to return to. With each step, the weight of their experiences seemed to lighten, and hope flickered like the neon lights of the clubs they used to frequent. As they approached the Apollo Theater, where Tony had first tasted the sweetness of applause, he felt a rush of nostalgia mixed with a hint of apprehension. He and Sam had endured so much, and yet here they stood, ready to reclaim their lives. The theater loomed before them, its marquee shining bright, promising a night of entertainment. For Tony, it was more than just a stage, it was a platform to share his journey, his pain, and ultimately, his love. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. The crowd buzzed with anticipation, unaware of the battles fought by the man who was about to step onto the stage. As Tony took his place under the spotlight, he glanced at Sam, seated front and center, a reassuring smile on his face. That smile carried the weight of their shared history, of sacrifices made and friendships forged in the crucible of war. It was a reminder that they had survived not just to exist, but to truly live again. With the first note escaping his lips, the audience fell silent, captivated by the raw emotion that emanated from him. He sang not just for himself, but for every soldier who had lost their way, for every loved one waiting at home, and for Maria, whose face lingered in his thoughts like a sweet melody. Each word carried the weight of his experiences, the love that had kept him going, and the hope that had ignited his soul in the darkest of times. "Love is a powerful thing," he crooned, his voice resonating through the theater. "It can heal wounds that we never thought would mend." The audience swayed, lost in the rhythm, and for a moment, the shadows of war lifted, replaced by the warmth of shared humanity. With every song, he wove a tapestry of resilience, reminding everyone that even in the face of despair, love could emerge triumphant. As the final notes faded and the applause erupted like a thunderstorm, Tony felt a surge of joy and relief. He had returned not just as a soldier, but as an artist who had faced hell and emerged with a heart full of love. The cheers enveloped him, pulling him back to the present, and he realized in that moment, he had truly come back home. Stepping backstage, Sam was waiting with open arms. "You did it, Tony! You brought the house down," he exclaimed, clapping him on the back. The joy in Sam's eyes mirrored the pride swelling in Tony's chest. Together, they had made it through the storm, and now they could finally embrace the light. "Thanks, Sam. I couldn't have done it without you," Tony replied, his voice thick with emotion. "You were my strength when I had none." They stood there for a moment, simply appreciating the journey they had taken together, a bond forged in fire and tempered by love. As they left the theater, the world outside felt alive again. The streets were filled with laughter, music, and the promise of a bright future. Tony turned to Sam, a thought forming in his mind. "You know, we should do this more often. Not just for us, but for everyone who needs to remember what we're fighting for. We need to share this music, this love." Sam nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. Let's organize shows, reach out to the other veterans, and remind them that they're not alone. We can create something beautiful out of all the darkness." Tony's heart swelled with purpose. This was his evolution. He had transformed from a soldier into a beacon of hope. No longer was he merely a man trying to reclaim a lost dream. He was now a voice for those who felt unheard, a reminder that love could conquer even the most harrowing of experiences. In the days that followed, they began organizing performances in local clubs, community centers, and even hospitals. With each note sung and each story shared, Tony witnessed the healing power of music. It was a cathartic release not just for himself but for the audience as well, many of whom were grappling with their own scars from the war. Through laughter and tears, they found solace in the shared experience of humanity. As their small movement grew, so did Tony's resolve. He used his platform to advocate for peace and love, to spread messages of unity and understanding. The jazz clubs became sanctuaries where people from all walks of life came together, celebrating the resilience of the human spirit. One evening, as Tony prepared for another performance, he received a letter from Maria. It was a simple note, filled with encouragement and love. She wrote about her own journey, how she had poured her heart into her art, inspired by his bravery. Reading her words, Tony felt a surge of emotion. He realized that their love had not only survived the distance but had flourished in the face of adversity. He picked up the phone, his heart racing as he dialed her number. When she answered, her voice was like honey, sweet and comforting. "Tony, is that you?" she asked, disbelief mingling with happiness. "It's me, Maria. I've missed you so much," he replied, his voice cracking slightly. "I want to share everything that's happened, the music, the shows, and most importantly, my love for you." "I can't wait to hear it all," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "I've been waiting for you to come back." In that moment, Tony realized that he was ready to embrace the next chapter of his life. He would not only share his music but also the love that had inspired it. As they spoke, plans began to form, and the anticipation of their reunion filled him with joy. With renewed vigor, Tony sprinted back to the stage, ready to pour his heart out once more. He stood before the mic, the audience before him eager and expectant. "Tonight, I want to dedicate this song to the one who kept my heart alive through the darkest nights, to the love that never wavered. Maria, this is for you." As he sang, he could feel the connection with the audience deepen. They were with him on this journey, experiencing his love, his pain, and his hope. The room pulsed with emotion, every note resonating with the shared understanding of what it meant to love and to lose, but ultimately, to rise again. As the final chord struck, the applause thundered once more, but this time it felt different. It was a celebration of resilience, of love prevailing against all odds. Tony took a deep breath, soaking in the moment, knowing that this was just the beginning. In the days that followed, Tony and Sam continued their mission, reaching out to veterans and communities, spreading messages of love and healing through music. They even began to collaborate with other artists, creating a movement that transcended borders and brought people together. As the sun set over the city, Tony and Sam sat on a rooftop, overlooking the skyline. "You know, we've come a long way," Sam said, a reflective tone in his voice. "Yeah, we really have," Tony replied, his heart full. "But there's so much more to do. We can't stop now." Sam grinned, the light of determination glinting in his eyes. "Then let's make it happen. Let's keep singing about love, about hope, and about the power of community. We owe it to everyone who fought for us." "Absolutely," Tony said, a smile stretching across his face. "Let's inspire others to find their voices too." As they gazed at the stars beginning to twinkle in the night sky, Tony felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He had walked through hell and returned with a heart full of love, a voice ready to sing, and a mission to uplift others. This was his resolution, his purpose, and he was ready to embrace it fully. And so, the journey continued, not just for Tony Bennett, but for anyone who dared to dream, to sing, and to love. As the music played on, the world became a little brighter, one note at a time. If you've enjoyed this story of resilience and love, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button if you believe in the power of music to heal, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of hope and creativity. Together, let's keep the spirit of love alive.